Good morning and welcome to this NLA webinar on how technology is reshaping built environment careers. I'm Sophie Goff, Associate Director at NLA, and I'm delighted to see so many of you joining us this morning. At NLA, we are London's built environment community, a cross-sector membership organisation for everyone committed to shaping a better city. And our 30,000 plus members work all across different aspects of city governance, planning, design, development and management, spanning public and private sectors. Throughout the year, NLA delivers events, research, exhibitions, and key flagship conferences from our home in the London Centre, as well as activations across the city. So today, in this webinar, we're going to be drawing insights from NLA's recent insight study, Skills for Places, Inspiring Future City Makers, which examines the barriers to entering careers in the built environment and the pathways needed to develop a more diverse, inclusive, and future-ready workforce. The webinar will reflect on how organisations across the sector are responding to this shift and integrating digital skills across roles using in-house design technology teams and building cross-functional talent pipelines. This event is part of our Future City Makers programme, so we thank our sponsors, programme champions, Stride Trickle and programme supporters Multiplex and Central District Alliance. There is opportunities for us to ask some questions to our great panelists at the end, so do add those into the Q&A function as we go through. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to our first speaker, Simon Long, Lead Project Manager for the London Planning Data Hub at the Greater London Authority, who's going to talk about the digital planning tools and data platforms currently being used at the GLA.
Thanks, Sophie. Hi, everyone. I'm Simon Long, as Sophie mentioned, and I am the currently interim head of data and digital at the GLA due to paternity leave cover. I can't seem to move the screen. A sec. There we go. So today I just want to talk about the planning data and digital tools and software that we use at the GLA. I'm going to talk about the top three icons in more detail on this course, so the planning data map, the planning London data and Land for London, but just to give you an idea of the ecosystem that we kind of run in the planning team at the GLA. And the other ones down the bottom, Arcus, which are a back office system for our planning team. So when we get referable applications, so those kind of bigger schemes that are more controversial and we need to make sure that they meet the London plan requirements, those applications get referred to us so that we can provide comments, and Arcus is the back office system that we use to manage that. And then related to that is a system called Plan Apps, which is a website which hosts that data for the general public, so you can see and view things on the map and have a look at the applications themselves in more detail. And the last one that I'm not going to really talk about in too much detail today is the High Street Data Partnership Service, which is a service for London boroughs to understand the footfall and the credit card spend in London based on particular high streets in the capital. So we get data from credit card companies and mobile data providers, and then we provide a service to help understand the impact on developments in London based on where people are and what kind of money they're spending on those high streets. As I said, I'm going to talk a little bit more about these three at the top. So the first one is the Planning London Data Hub. This system is a digital twin of the planning system. So essentially, we get a record of all the applications in London, and we do that by getting daily feeds from all of the London boroughs' back office systems, and that gets centralized into our system. And then we collect data from the planning portal where the applicant has entered, for example, how many homes they're going to build, or what kind of floor space they're going to do on a commercial development, through to things like parking and EV chargers and how many solar panels they might put in their development. So we collect all that data. We've currently got over 1 million planning applications in that database, so it's a very large database. And then the key thing to mention about it is that we monitor data from submission all the way through to completion. So as soon as the application comes into our system from the council when it's valid, it gets tracked through to when it's decided whether approved or refused, and then when they start to build it, and when they complete it. And we use that data to report to central government about the housing figures in the whole of London. We are launching, and the screenshot you can see there is our new beta website, which basically gives you anyone access to go in and have a look at the data in there. And we've built some kind of key filters to try and help navigate to those different things that people might want to see. So everyone is welcome to go and have a look at that, and any feedback on it, please do let me know. The planning data map is a system which brings in policy data from the London boroughs. So, for example, all the London boroughs may have conservation areas, or they may have flood risk zones, or some other quite about 20 or 30 different layers of policy data. We combine that into one layer across London. So one layer for conservation areas, one layer for your infrastructure requirements. And that's been live now since December 2023, and it's been used quite a lot for people to try and understand what the impacts could be. So, can I build a house in this particular location, or is there going to be any impact on that because it is in a flood risk zone, for example? And by doing that, we just create a centralized area, which means it's much easier for people to go and have a look at, rather than going through different borough websites to find the same data for the entirety of London. That's live on our website as well. And those two products combined mean that we can provide a system which we call Land for London for the London boroughs to understand about the capacity in London. So what we end up doing is we combine all those data sets, and then the boroughs can give information about how many houses they can build in particular areas. So some of that is site allocations data, which is essentially areas where the council said we want to encourage development in these areas because there's opportunity for houses to be built. But it's just a guess at the moment of how many they could build. And then there's a planning permission that may come in over the top of that. And we have calculations to basically work out through those different areas how many houses could be built. So the whole area could be for 1,000 units, and then we get planning permission for 500 units in just a quarter of it. So we do some calculations to work out overall how many houses can be built in those areas, and that gets spread across London. And we can basically have one centralized system where we can get housing capacity figures for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And the boroughs are just working on cleansing that data at the moment, making sure it's ready, and then soon we'll be running a new strategic housing land availability assessment program, which runs every 5 years, and that will be published probably next year to give an indication of what the GLA think can be delivered in the capital. But that's just the system that we use or started to use. And to support that, we have a number of different softwares that we use in the background. So FME Flow is a data processing platform, and it basically does all the automation stuff that we want to do and not have to have kind of people doing the work. So it will run things like finding a polygon and working out what the site area is, or it may run in the background and fetch the data from the planning portal. So all those kind of activities, and it does lots and lots of things overnight, typically, to help process our data. We're working on as well. Sorry, I just skipped ahead there one too many. We're working on starts completions automation. So as I mentioned earlier, we have to report on how many houses get built in London, and we do that by trying to detect when things are happening. So we'll have the planning application and when it's going to be delivered potentially, but we don't actually know when it starts or finishes. So we use external data sources such as council tax, built-in control, energy performance certificates, these external data sources, which we then overlay on a map with our polygons for the applications, and we identify where we think things have potentially started. So that process is entirely reliant on GIS software, and is really going to start improving the way that we report data from the end of this year onwards, really, when we start to use it in anger. And the other thing that we've been doing lately is, like probably everyone, work through AI, but we've been doing this through essentially ChatGPT. The problem we had before was that not every application came through with the right number of residential units. So say a developer was building 1,000 units. If they didn't report that correctly on the planning portal, we wouldn't get that data through. And when that happened previously, we were just using Power BI reports to show applications where we think development may, uh, where applications should include residential units, but we wouldn't know how many. We would just be able to flag, right, this one should have residential units. Whereas now through ChatGPT, we can get it to read the description. It will tell us, oh, it should be 900 versus 1,000. We can use that to compare the data. So it's a much more accurate way of focusing on the gaps on our data. And that's something we're rolling out more and more for more use cases as we go forwards. So how these tools help meet our objectives? Well, having consistent and reliable data is crucial to report the data to central government about when housing starts and completions happen. So at the moment, we're running through an annual starts completions process. We expect that to be finished in the next month, and then those figures will be uploaded to them. We use spatial data, as I mentioned, to try and find out as much information as we can about the site. So the GIS element is really, really important. And our use of AI has helped us really focus in on the applications where there's missing data. When you've got a million planning applications in the system, it's very, very difficult to hone in the ones that you really want, but AI is helping us to do that. And as we continue to improve the quality of the data, we're going to be sharing this with the London boroughs because it's their data that they manage. We just have to kind of help them with that. And the last thing is that this data is key to understanding where the future housing delivering will come from, so we can build prediction models about when things are going to happen and how many houses are going to be built in the next 5-10 years. So really, our future needs, we're going to be heavily reliant on GIS software, data processing software as well, which is kind of just the legwork of the stuff that's really important. And then once we've got that data in a nice, clean format, it's about how we can analyze and produce dashboards and visualizations about that data in a much more interesting way. And finally, the use of AI is going to be critical to do that, or to combine all of those things together. I think that's the end of my presentation.
That's great. Thank you so much, Simon. That was really interesting to hear how kind of things are developing quite quickly at the GLA and how you're using that data going forwards. Um, so it'd be great now to introduce Mohammed Alithi, who is Head of Information Management Services at Turner and Townsend, who's going to present how Turner and Townsend is identifying, adopting, and integrating new digital tools and also upskilling their team. So over to you, Mohammed.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Sophie. I'm just trying to move to next slide. Yeah, voice might be a bit lag in my end. Yeah, here we go. So like Sophie mentioned, my name is Mohammed Lacy, Head of BIM Information Management. So today we'll be talking about the building skills in upskilling in digital. So as we are all aware, and you can see from the NLA report as well, the built environment is digitizing very fast, maybe faster than ever. So technologies like AI, BIM, digital twins, and data platforms are no longer optional. They are, as we are, becoming the norm. But this shift is also bringing some challenges, and many teams might be struggling to keep pace with the skills needed to use these tools effectively. So the skills gap isn't also just technical, it's actually project risk that could be impacting cost, quality, and also delivery. So we are really also seeing professional roles evolve. So architects, engineers, and consultants are now expected to pick up new digital skills that they probably weren't trained in. And the demand for digital agility now exceeds the sector supply. So to keep up, we must rethink how we learn, work, and define our professional capabilities. Okay. So it's a bit slow on my end. Yeah, here we go. Um, oops, I jumped it a bit faster. Yeah, so at Turner& Townsend, we primarily work across complex and multidisciplinary project. So we regularly like navigate many tools, data sources, and stakeholders, and also clients want and asking us to be faster, smarter, and making sure the delivery is getting quicker. However, the legacy systems that is designed probably for another era can't keep up with today's needs. So and adopting this technology as well won't fix this. So the really challenge is really, as we see it, is aligning people, processes, and mindset. And that's also the opportunity. So if we think about embedding digital thinking, not just the tools through every part of delivery, we probably can unlock real value to projects delivery. So that's why our focus in Turner Townsend is on rebuilding delivery from the inside out and using the digital thinking as a foundation for project delivery. Um, so we knew from beginnings that we needed structured approach to build just these digital capabilities. So we built a framework that's focused on our role-based skills. Because, for example, what a consultant might need is could be different from a project manager. And we also don't chase shiny technologies. So what we're trying to do is instead is trying to align the tools to actual workflow. So our training usually mixes structured learning with hands-on application, and we encourage cross-disciplinary learning as well. So like consultants to explore automations, or for example, project managers get experience in BIM or information management. Um, and we also embedded BIM automation and data science into our core curriculum. So that's by default. And we prioritize upskilling project leads, not only the digital employees, which we found very important. Um, and more importantly, we track progress with clear key performance indicator or KPIs. So trainings becomes part of the culture, not just a one-off tick box activity. Um, And yeah, so there are plenty of tools out there, obviously, in the market and industry, but we focus usually in purposeful adoption. So focusing on things like interoperability and ultimately to achieve the return of investment of any tool we're trying to use. So for collaboration, we primarily use the Autodesk Construction Cloud. And for model assurance, for example, from BIM perspective, we mainly use a tool called Solibri, allowing us to do it more effectively. And also low-code platforms like Morta, which is widely recognized in the industry. So it's helping us to create flexible databases without the need to be developers. So and Power BI as well, helping us to turn static reports into more live dynamic projects and sites. Um, we also use programming like Python, so that's to automate more of repetitive tasks and streamline activities like QA and QC. Um, AI agents as well, like Simon mentioned, we in Turner Townsend primarily using Copilot, and it's also like helping us to analyze larger documents of project information, which is becomes very useful and integrated as part of our day-to-day work. Um, However, importantly, like every tool, like you can see here, or any new tool usually we adopt, it goes through us like a cycle of processes. So we trial it, we gather feedback, and we only then integrate it. So it's not just we go for it. And that's how we think we stay more lean and effective and up to date with the latest technologies. So in terms of lessons learned, so I'll be honest, the journey hasn't been perfect. So obviously we've done some few mistakes. So one of it was thinking, for example, that a single training approach would work for everyone. Well, it didn't. So people obviously learn differently, and they need trainings that is more relevant to their daily work. We also learned that senior leaders must lead by example. So without visible support from the top, the rest of the team probably won't prioritize it either. So rolling out tools without updating workflow also led to failure. And usually people tend to get frustrated when technology adds more complexity to their existing practices or workflow. So we found better results when we celebrated small wins. So like, for example, a team automating a report or resolving maybe a coordination issue faster, relying on data to make better decisions. Um, so upskilling also require time, so that's important. So not just enthusiasm, we need time to make sure it's actually happening. And perhaps the most importantly one that we shifted from a compliance-based approach to a focused on value. So when training deliver value, so adoption we not will follow a lot more effectively. Um, right, so like we mentioned, so the roles in the industry are evolving fast. So we're seeing new job titles like BIM strategist, digital analyst, or BIM analyst, and BIM developers. So these didn't exist a few years back. It used to be like BIM coordinator, BIM manager. But beyond generally the job title, what's really changing is the capability. So consultants and designers now need to work with data and automation and sometimes even code. That, however, doesn't mean that everyone has to be a programmer. So what we actually need is a T-shaped professional. So which means those people with deep expertise in one specific area and a broader range of understanding across digital as a whole. So curiosity and collaboration also now just as important as credential really. And we believe those who bridge the technical and the human side of projects will be leading our industry moving forward. So where to go from here? So the digital feature isn't coming, so it's already here, which is a good thing. So our task now is probably to embed the digital thinking, not just the digital tools. And that means rethinking outdated roles definition and building capability based on what's really needed. Also, learning must be seen as a long-term strategy, not just a short-term cost. So shifting our thinking about this mindset would help quite a lot. And we need professionals who can collaborate across disciplines, understand system thinking, and use data as well as a design tool. And we must go in this together. So it's not only from a particular sector, so the public, private, and academia sectors, they all has to collaboratively work together to push the industry forward. So that's how I think we future-proof our talent pipeline. And yeah, let's build smarter together. Thank you.
That was great. Thank you, Mohammed. So we are moving into our panel discussion, and I'd like to remind our audience that we do have our Q&A box function. So do please start getting those questions in as we move to speak to our panel. I would like to introduce two additional speakers to our group. So Melanie Robinson joins us as an associate from Okana, and Giedrius Valentinas is a project director of major projects at Staticus. So welcome to you both. I think we'll bring Melanie in first with the questions. So it'd be great to hear a bit about what digital tools Akana are using in the design process, how those tools are kind of reshaping your internal approach in terms of how you're delivering, but also how you're building the skills to support that.
Sure. Thank you, Sophie, and hi, everyone. Lovely to be here today. So yeah, I guess just a quick introduction to who O'Connor is. We are 100% owned by Ryder Architecture, and I sit in the digital transformation space, but part of that looks at the information management function supporting Ryder as designers. So I'm going to speak from that perspective today and answering that question in particular. Obviously, as we progress into a further digital world, we're adopting more and more digital tools, particularly with the advent of AI as well, and trying to understand what that means, not only from an automating tasks, especially some of the more tedious ones in terms of scheduling and all that fun stuff. It's more about understanding the ethics and even the sustainability impacts of what we're doing as well, through digital tools. What we also use in-house, in addition to that, are a lot of low code. I know Mortar's already been mentioned, but that's one of the avenues we're exploring in order just to increase that data-led perspective and database way of approaching information management and all that good stuff, especially through the Building Safety Act, where the focus isn't necessarily on developing intelligent smart buildings or digital twins, but actually just creating a solid foundation of and that golden thread of information that still relies inherently on documentation, and that all still needs to be managed using coherent data standards and interoperability principles to deliver that. In terms of capabilities, it's always an interesting conversation, especially balancing new talent versus how we upskill and train the existing talent that we have in-house. As we're seeing the younger generation come into the business, we're actually seeing a lot quicker adoption of any digital tool, because that's starting to just become their bread and butter. So there's a lot less need to sit down and take them through how to adopt technology, because they're more adept to understanding how software works in general, and understanding, even if they've never used it before, where to find functions and how to use them. So we're finding that learning curve is happening a lot quicker with the younger generation, which is fantastic. On the flip side of that, what we need to ensure is that we're not just training people to be technically amazing at software. We need to make sure that they are growing their skills in that ability to adaptively think and critically think as well. And that touches on that AI piece again, where we need to be really careful with how much we're relying on the tools to tell us information and how we derive insights from the data that we're receiving. We've always got to apply that human element of interrogation to what we're looking at, just as a good design needs that human touch in order to create amazing designs that are suitable for the human experience. We can't just rely on a computer to tell us what that is. We've absolutely got to apply our critical thinking to that. But in terms of what we're doing then to upskill the existing people within the business, which obviously touches on a whole range of ages and capabilities and backgrounds. We're trialing different things such as hackathons, bridging the gap between universities as well. So we're bringing in that new knowledge into the business, and we're solving tangible problems that we're facing on actual projects by bringing in this new perspective, and that helps people adapt, because they can see the change that they need to have on projects unfold in front of them. So they're not just being told how to change, they're actually understanding the impact of it. And that's in addition to obviously learning and development, structured training, as well as some of the more unstructured training as well, through casual conversations. And that's why we're big advocates of getting together and actually talking about the impacts of using tools and digital technologies. So hopefully that's answered your question, Sophie, and thank you again for the opportunity.
It has, and I think it's an interesting point that you touch on there, the difference, between upskilling and the new stuff kind of coming through from education backgrounds. And it'd be interesting if anyone else has any perspectives on that, if that's something you're seeing in your teams. I don't know if anyone did want to come in on anything that Melanie said then. No.
Yeah.
Being too scared and shy. But we'll move on. We'll come back to that point, I think. But Geertrui, I think it'd be great to hear from you a bit about what Staticus has been doing. You've embedded the technology and the digital tools into your culture and the delivery of projects. So that how you hire and train talent is kind of really great to hear about.
Thanks, Sophie. Nice to be here, and thanks for inviting. So I will start with presenting myself and the company. So I'm actually based in Vilnius, Lithuania. My name is Giedrius Valantinas, and I represent Staticus. We are designing, producing, installing facades around Europe and UK. So representing more of our delivery side, although we're looking into some of the digital tools that could help for planning or starting us working in the planning phase. In terms of the projects, we mainly focus now on and work on projects in London. So we have eight schemes, and one of probably most big one is the One Exchange Square project with Multiplex that we're currently working there, and we're adapting some of that technology over there. And in terms of how we innovate and how we kind of upskill our talent, and I would start with the strategic kind of picture. So we currently work under 2024-2027 strategic goal, and two of the five must-win battles, as we call them, there are related directly to the technology. And the one is, I will not mention exact names, but let's say one is related with people and the other is related with technology, right? So when it comes to the innovation, we don't have like a separate department to do the digital work, right? We try to embed that within all the departments, all the teams, and our teams that work on the project deliveries, designing, producing, delivering, installing, they are merged and representing each and every other value chain. So this is how they can change their knowledge, kind of innovate and share the experience as well. The other thing we have adapted from the digital kind of sphere is how we plan. So we use OKRs planning and agile teams for to look ahead for 3 months and then plan in the shorter sprints and do all these retrospectives. We've started that process in 2019. And I think right about now it starts to get benefits where teams are actually understanding what the objective is, what the key result is, and how to measure that, and what it means to sit down and go through retrospective and learn lessons. And it works for both for project delivery, but also for any other internal project which we use to innovate. The other thing I think that helps a lot is that we have a quite flat structure. Really, anyone can go and do projects, speak with anyone across the company, and we emphasize a lot that the digital transformation is not just a responsibility of one specific department, right? And we have some good actually examples where people have been noticed for being very technical savvy and driving those innovations, and we have promoted them from being like design engineers to being product managers, digital product managers within the company. And when it comes to a few of the examples we have managed to develop, so for instance, we have a tool that helps us optimize material use, that saves material, that saves reduces the waste, right? Increases the or lowers down the CO2 emissions. We have a tool that helps us to track throughout to have the actual status of every panel that we have on the project throughout the delivery. We share that openly with clients, and this is something I think not only that technology is enabling, but also the way we look to the things that we are transparently sharing, information that would be rather hidden otherwise. And yeah, I hope that answers the question in the broader terms, and happy to continue discussion.
Thanks. I think you kind of started to talk a little bit there about answering one of the questions that we've actually had from one of our attendees. So, looking at the tools that bridge that gap between internal and client side. And I wonder if there's something that anyone else has got experience with, or if there is, anything that needs to come in to help us improve in that sense.
Is the question to all or?
To all, if anyone answers it, or if you want to talk a little bit more about how that works in your team.
I would just say from our perspective is that speaking about construction industry, everyone seems to be entrenched more than anywhere else. It's just a presumption, but this is how we see, because we have an opportunity to work across various different markets, so Scandinavia, UK, Lithuania, Netherlands. So we work across different countries, and they have different requirements, different cultures. But the one thing that remains, that everyone within the project, all the parties tend to keep the information closer to themselves, and I think that is preventing to actual kind of transformation across how we use the tools, because tools are there. We have tools there. We just don't have the workflow. We don't have that trust to share that information because it's commercially sensitive, and it's also, some of that is a skill gap. Of course, I agree with that, but not only that. So someone has to take the first step, and we think we're taking that step. We're sharing that information openly, and by the looks of it, it gives benefits because people and the companies and our clients are recognizing our transparency.
Mohammed.
Yeah, that's a great, I think, answer. Just to follow up on that, so client stakeholder engagement is one of the key areas. So it's usually what we tend to find, especially in quite complex, large scheme of programs, that if the client don't understand what is expected and what's need to be delivered, it is becoming quite harder to eventually for the delivery team, or from our perspective as project manager, to be able to manage the project. So one of the techniques that we usually tend to use at the beginning of any project to close this gap is having this stakeholder engagement session with the client. So usually tend to be like in the sense of workshops. We work together, we understand, even though we might be already appointed and we have a brief and we have a program, but having this early communication and having this workshop is helping to not only to build the relationship with the client, but also to clarify a lot of ambiguities that probably it came earlier. So I think the early engagement is helping quite a lot. So usually using tools like Miro, which is having various kind of analysis around it as well. And through these stakeholder engagement sessions, we have a better definition of how we actually approach the project. So that's, I would definitely recommend the early stage engagements is extremely important to close this gap.
Melanie?
Hi, yeah. So two perspectives to this. From a design perspective, what we've seen is, particularly from the principal designer perspective, the use of the 3D environment has been absolutely brilliant with clients, because it really does communicate risks a lot better. Is that visual aid just is able to understand just how what impact we're doing in terms of the mitigations, and being able to actually understand the scale of what they're looking at. And then the other side to it is, of course, it's not just about that 3D environment. It's absolutely about the data, and using Power BI and just having really simple dashboards that say and demonstrate progress against what clients need to see. And the amazing thing that we're seeing about that is that there's different ways of cutting up data, right? And not everybody needs to understand the inner workings of how we've got there, but we can absolutely carve that out to what they need to see, compared to what the technologists on the program need to see, compared to what the engineers need to see. And that's the benefit. I think we're at the risk of over diluting with data in a lot of ways, just to show how clever we are at building buildings, but actually what the skill is being able to communicate what is relevant to the relevant parties. So just two different perspectives there that we're seeing.
Thank you. And Simon wants to come in on this one as well, I think.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to follow up on some of the things being said about how some of this data needs to be open, but fundamentally you need data at the beginning of it to be able to unlock some of these things. So what we've been doing with the GLA is trying to provide this data service that will enable people to have this open data, and that's partly what we're building with the website. But so, AI is great, but it's only up to a certain point that you can rely on it. And so what we're doing with it is trying to enable the London boroughs to see the information that they need to check and then go in and manually and edit the data. So completely agree with what Melanie said earlier about, we can rely on it so much, but you still need that human input. So we're moving towards a place where we're trying to make it more open and more accessible. And there is an open API to our data as well. But just wanted to kind of flag that I completely agree that we need to get to a place where we've got open data, but that we make sure it's trustworthy and reliable, and so that you're always going to need that human element. And there's teams of people working in the boroughs on the kind of data service for planning that are doing that, but it's just a lot to get through.
It is. And thinking then specifically about skills, we've got a question from our audience about if you were to start a course in the built environment at university, what are the specific things that you should be thinking about and planning to do to prepare for that future career in a kind of digital world? I don't know if anyone's got an immediate jump in on that, Melanie.
Yeah, no, a subject very close to my heart. So obviously technology moves fast, and I think that's what we've always got to remember. And I think we can often get stuck in hyper focusing on what is current. So what I would say is shifting focus to the likes of open data standards that has already been mentioned a couple of times now. Focusing on the principles of healthy data sharing, that interoperability and that reliability. So looking more around the governance piece rather than the technicalities, which are at risk of changing very, very quickly. Obviously, really important, and how you consume that data and interact with it is I'm not denying that is a very critical part to a day job now. But in terms of that future proofing, I would definitely look at that governance piece more than anything at this point in time. And hopefully, I wish you all the best in your future endeavours, and hopefully I've helped a little bit there.
And Mohammed?
I totally agree with Melanie. Just to add to this, based on my experience, because probably I went through similar cycles through university, and basically like progressed from there. So I think from my perspective is I totally agree that technology is technology and it will continually evolve. So rather than trying to approach only from technology perspective, think about the process. So the process is probably harder to be changing over time. So for example, in the built environment, we have the ISO 19650, which is a framework defining how the whole project is delivered, how is each party is interacting with each other, roles, responsibility. Then there is the tools that's supporting the delivery of that. So probably we touch base on some of it in this presentation, but from a designer perspective, you might find different tools from contractor perspective, and it's continuously competing with each other, the implementing and adding AIs. So it's hard to start from technology because it's continuously evolved. But if you start with a process and a very established one like ISO 19650, then learns the technologies on top of it that's supporting whatever your role is about, I think that will be a good starting point.
Great. Is there any other thoughts from the rest of our panel on kind of where you would start out in your career if you were doing it again now? No.
Really, I would just say that it would be more difficult for me now to decide than it was 15 years ago, 20 years ago. So I would find myself in a difficult situation, but yeah, you need to adapt and change.
Okay, maybe coming to Simon first on this one, just thinking about the kind of planning approvals process. So someone has asked with kind of delays in getting approvals through Gateway 2, of the Building Safety Act, are there potentials that digitization can help to fast track that approval process?
It's a difficult one, this, because I think in terms of the Building Safety Act, I think a lot of this has come around because of the second staircase issue, where buildings have to be a certain height, they have to have a second staircase. So that's led to a lot of complications with developments that were probably midway through their process. I think there's a lot of information out there about what you need to get the planning permission out there. I think the London plan. So if you're doing it in London, the meeting the London plan requirements kind of one of those critical things, and it's a huge document. So this is where maybe AI could help in some aspects to kind of sift through this large kind of documents to understand if you're trying to build a building a particular size, shape, density, whatever it may be, maybe to focus in on what you need to do to make sure your applications are meeting that London plan requirements, and that might help. Maybe not fast track it, but may make the negotiations and the complications through the planning process slightly easier. I think that's probably the one thing I've kind of learned through particular experiences in the last year or so of using AI, and that filtering down huge documents about the kind of key things that you need to know. And it is all about the prompt that you put into it. If you're going to use something like ChatGPT or Copilot, asking the particular questions about what you want to do and giving the context to kind of get through to the answers. But it's not an easy answer, unfortunately. There's still going to be lots of negotiations and twists and turns to get those permissions in.
Thanks, Simon. Coming to Melanie.
Yeah, I'm doing a lot of work in this space at the moment. So just two ends of a spectrum, and just picking up on what Simon said there, I do agree, and I think we've got to look to other countries to see what they've done in terms of particularly of automating the building code process, like looking at the likes of Singapore, Norway. That it's been done before. And actually, I'm co-supervising a PhD student that's looking at the use of AI for building regulations and to try and remove some of that ambiguity. So that's some of the blue sky thinking in a way, and hopefully we will get there one day. However, on the other side of the spectrum, we've got to remember that we are still dealing with a very heavily documented process, and that's how the entire gateway application process is facilitated. And it's not that long ago that the BSR had to open up to the fact that we've got to use hyphens in code in document names, which is absolutely one of the information management principles that we all rely on. So it's balancing those two realities. And what I would say is not to keep banging the drum, but the information management principles here will make that a lot simpler. And what I mean by that is, the ability to plan information, the ability to track that information, the ability to quality assure that information through automated processes, because it's standardized and named in a nice way and audited and tracked with version control, will make that process of reviewing the information a lot easier for the BSR, because we've got reliable ways of referencing documents, etc. And it does sound really simple, but where I've seen some failed applications, the way the information management has been managed or structured is really quite poor, to the point where they've reference documents, and that loses credibility in your application. So it sounds simple, it's not, but it does go a long way in basically structuring your argument in how you're saying that your building is safe to build and operate.
And Giedris.
Just to add the perspective from a specialist constructor point of view, and following on what Melanie said, so we actually do quite a lot of work in Norway, for instance, or Sweden and Iceland, right? And we design facades or the full envelope there, and requirements that we are facing there are not like UK has requirements non-second. The detail that is required for a design contractor in Norway is incompatible. You only need few drawings, and the whole responsibility lays with you under the law and the contract. Whereas now in UK, we have to fully design the project before we even go into any other further process, and there is not more time added to that. So I think other countries, at least at this point, and from our perspective, what we see, they're not going into tightening requirements, but rather other direction and using 3D long time ago. And from Gateway 2 perspective, what we could do as again, not on regulation part of view, but from the contractor's point of view. So definitely we could provide information in a better understandable manner, or we could provide that uh, through the digital platforms, right? Better explained and presented. The only challenge though is that at this point we have to send 2D drawings, for instance. We have to send technical submissions all written in PDFs, right? And whereas all modeling and designing is being done in 3D, a lot of that. So I think there's a gap over there on how this information is being created on one hand, and on the other hand, how it's being read and checked against.
Thanks, everyone. Thinking another question here from our audience about how we can kind of bring smaller firms or less digitally mature firm, or people from less digitally mature backgrounds on that journey to digital fluency within the built environment. How can we ensure that everything we're doing is accessible kind of at every level? I don't know if anyone has an immediate jump in on that one. Or I'm going to pick on someone. Okay, Melanie, well done.
I know, sorry, I'm answering every question here.
Yeah.
No, I think there's certainly a role here for the institutes to play. Obviously, we've got to balance out the fact that they've got significant amounts to focus on, but I think because digital is becoming as critical as bricks and mortar in a lot of ways to how we do our day jobs, I think there's certainly a role they can play in that. And I think we need to shout more about what we do. I think demonstrate how it's not just the big mega projects that are applying digital and applying it well. I think more case studies and more demonstrations of the benefits of the smaller players will go a long way, because oftentimes we love talking about the big hospitals and the big estates and all that good stuff, but I can see why smaller firms look at that and go, well, we don't do those sorts of projects, ergo that's not applicable to us. So I think there's an impetus on those working in this field already to actually talk more about the different scales of digital applications and more to the point, the challenges and how they were overcome and the benefits that have come from that process. And that will help people look at that and go, actually, we can try that and we can adopt that as well.
Thank you. Mohammed?
Yeah, thanks, Sophie. So probably I will refer back to one of my slides that I presented earlier about the framework, because this framework is generic enough, I think, to be applicable to either large organization or smaller organizations. So you always start with the purpose. So you have to be purposeful of the tools you're using. So for example, a lot of years ago, now if I remember, most of the architects and engineers and nearly everyone in the industry, probably 15, 20 years ago, were using AutoCAD, which is a tool used for design, and that was everything in the majority of the industry and nearly everyone. And then there came a transition into Revit, which is a new tool, which is introduced BIM and introduced 3D geometry and data and various different principles. And like it's exactly happening and repeating itself in every single era. If you think about it, you might be using certain tools now, but the industry introduced something else more efficient or more productive, that it's not only will help you to deliver things faster, but also think about it from return of investment. It might take you a bit longer to do the transition, even though, and takes a lot of investment, but look at the long-term strategy and the return of investment down the line. So thinking about it this way would help you, not just to just put few examples here. I'm not saying go for Revit, but yeah, you have to think about from a strategic perspective and track against it and see if it's working. If it's not working, you might want to adapt and update your approach.
Amazing, thank you. I think we've got time for one last question, and it'd be great to get everyone's thoughts on this as a kind of final thought on the kind of round the group. So we have touched on this briefly, but what are the most critical digital skills that built environments professionals should be developing right now to remain relevant, the question asks for the next 5 to 10 years. I'm not sure that that's possible for us to even know at this stage what's going to be relevant in 10 years' time. But yeah, any kind of final thoughts from the speakers about what can we all be doing now to stay ahead of the game as we move forwards? Let's come to Simon first. Sorry.
From my point of view, I deal fundamentally with the application process. So when applications get submitted, and if you ever submit a planning application in London, you will probably be given a lot more questions to answer, which is our thought through our project. But that's not going away anywhere. That's a move from PDF documents to digital data, and we've been working with MHLG, and that they're planning to do kind of a national cut down version of it, but move towards that. So moving away from PDF documents and duplicating information is critical from my point of view. So being able to, to be honest, it's not actually, and this aspect of it alone is not actually that hard. It's just about being able to navigate the planning application form. So providing the correct information up front is so critical for us to be able to understand what is being built in our areas. So if people don't supply the residential unit information or the floor space information or how big the site is, we can't then work out what the impact is on Thames Water, for example, because if they don't know how many houses are being built down the road from local town centre or whatever, it could be the difference of them not knowing, having no information versus knowing there's going to be 1,000 homes being built, and that information is critical for them. So a lot of this isn't just about having these wonderful skills, it's just about engaging with the process properly and making sure that the data you provide up front is accurate as possible. It's not to say it's going to be perfect, it never will be, but yeah, just keep on top of, my advice generally would be keep on top of where things are moving in the sector. It's not just about knowing AI and being fantastic in AI, because that will never be the answer to everything, but just stay relevant in where things are moving, I think would be my advice generally.
Amazing, thank you. Georgios?
My short answer to this question would be think about the problem that business is solving or you're trying to solve, and then what is the best tool at that time to actually solve that problem would be the answer. And also from the person's point of view, it will always be most important to understand where you are, where age you live at. So thinking about what is the best tool, what is the best skill for you to solve that problem, that really matters. I think that's the most relevant and important.
Great. And Mohammed?
Yeah, so probably I can predict what might happen in 5, 10 years, maybe longer. Might work, might not work. So I don't know, but I like to give it a shot. So I think like the construction industry or built environment, as probably everyone in the industry aware, we are, as much as technology and digital is moving fast, we are the least adopting to digital. But looking outside to other industries, especially in I don't know, like ChatGPT, Facebook, or Meta, and this larger kind of technological firms. So there is a big AI skills fight about anyone with the programming and AI. So I think that's will shift the whole entire world in the next 5 maybe years. So it will come to us as an industry and it will impact us maybe in 20 years time. But if you think from now to want future proof yourself and learn these skills and start pushing the industry from now on, I think that will be a good area, even though we're still lagging behind PDFs and documents based. But I think blending this skill with your existing role, whether it's an architect or an engineer, or what is your role is that you're playing in the built environment, I think having this skill sets and programming, data analytics mindset, all of this will gear us towards this direction. Probably they will lead the way, but it will come to us eventually. So if you start from there, I think from now, we might get there faster.
Great. And finally, from Melanie.
Yeah, no, thank you. I guess rounding off and bookending my opening comments, I think in terms of competencies, I think critical thinking, I think being able to draw insight from what you're consuming and not just regurgitating data for the sake of regurgitating data. And again, the use of AI and the likes of ChatGPT is really emphasizing that it's not just about blindly taking the data and using it. It's absolutely, what does this mean? Is it even correct? Is it valid for what I need? And speaking on one of the earlier points, does it fulfill the purpose for why I need data? Those skills will be, in my mind, timeless, regardless of where technology goes. And I guess just to re-emphasize one of my answers to one of the earlier questions, it's also about those open data governance pieces as well, because again, that is agnostic to the technology that's being used and spoken about here.
Amazing. Well, that does bring us to the end of our session, and I think there were some amazing insights from all of our panelists. So thank you all for joining us this morning. Anyone else who isn't a member already, do check out the NLA website where you can get access to lots more events like this, as well as in-person events at the London Centre. There'll be a short poll up on the screen for anyone who has attended, so please do give us feedback. It helps us to make these events as good as possible. Thank you once again to our speakers, and we will see you soon.